We today want to test the differences between tier 6, 7, and 8 in terms of gold per hour. So all I'm really going to do is do a tier 6, 7, and 8. I'm going to open up other chests until I get the same. We're going to just open up like 400. Seems like it would be feasible. 400 Aether into the gold chest, and we're going to see how much gold we get for 400 Aether from all three tiers. I'm going to go ahead and do a tier 6, and at the end of this, we'll talk briefly. Here's the build, by the way. It does no damage, and then whoop, it does all the damage. Alright, while we're doing this boss fight, I'd like to say, out of the 3 builds that I've done so far this season, this build feels really fun, and it's satisfying to see these huge, big pops of damage, like right there. But out of the 3 builds, this is definitely like the weakest one. The survivability is pretty horrible in tier 7 and tier 8s. There's not really you get a lot of health pickups, but it's like the gear makes this build quite squishy. You pretty much need Tyrael's Might. There's no damage reduction built into this build with its uniques, and whenever you do get hit, you get hit really hard. So we're gonna do 300 into the gold chest every time. So starting gold, 159 million, 307, 209 million. Okay. Well, let's do tier 7s. We got ourselves a run here. So as far as tier 7s go, that's about as good as it gets. 914 Aether, 11 million, 211 million, 314. $269 million. Alright. I would highly recommend, if you're playing this league or this season, and if you're wanting to farm reliably quick and do in-game content without having to think or really work hard, do this build. It's kind of insane. It's probably the best build I've ever played on Diablo 4 to date. Really couldn't recommend it highly enough. Let's do this tier 8. See you at the end. Tier 8 done. Good. 270, 271. Alright guys, so now that the runs are done, we got a little bit of info we can plug into a nice little spreadsheet. I'll do that right after this. But I wanted to take a little bit of time to go through and just look at the gear. I did my tier 6 hordes with this Blood Surge Necromancer build. A guy named Goblin Inc. INC on YouTube. I got his build guide from there through Mobilytics. Built this guy in 17 hours or so, and he's got pretty decent gear. He could definitely do tier 7s and tier 8s. This build is capable. I just feel good in tier 6s, and you can just one-shot everything, and he struggles with tier 8 bosses, and he's a little squishy, to be honest. So I wouldn't recommend, if you could do the other two builds, I would go over them a lot before I resorted to doing this guy in tier 8s. The level of gear that you need in order to be able to do tier 8s is pretty extreme. You can tell I've got some decent gear. I hit triple crit on that. I got the life greater affix, got double greater affix on here, and he still struggles in tier 8s. So I'm not saying the guy clickbaited, but this is not an easy coast through tier 8s, obliterate all builds. Just, it's a Blood Surge Necro, it's strong, it's fun, it's satisfying, it's great for Hell Tides, killing the Blood Maiden, but let's go to the Rogue. Finding the, I actually just Googled Andariel's Barrage, and this build popped up. And I just followed the build guide, and this is what it came up with. So 100% attack speed, it's armor capped, 46k life, Tyrael's Might, Andariel's Visage, Starless Skies. It's got good gear. Triple crit on the double proc. All in all, I mean, triple crit on high tier or high roll Fists of Fate. No greater affixes on anything, but you can tell, I mean, you don't need this level of investment to be able to do tier 7s. There are a lot of builds that can do tier 7s, but this is what I used, and I would highly recommend this build. It's great for bossing, and it can do tier 7s and tier 8s really well. The trick is just hold down attack. All your survivability comes from doing damage, with Andariel's giving you 633 life on hit. It's a huge survivability boon. And that's the only real tip I have for this build. If you like Rogue, the Andariel's Barrage Rogue is S tier, 100%. Let's go to the Sork. I wouldn't be a Diablo 4 tryhard if I didn't have the current meta build, which is the Lightning Spear Sork. I don't have perfect gear, but I have pretty good gear. And it does tier 8s like butter. This is the most important piece here, is triple rolled into cooldown reduction, and then also you want cooldown reduction on your Talarasha ring. You need at least 0.3 seconds on your conjuration cooldowns are reduced to make this feel pretty good. Crit damage, crit strike, just as much crit strike as possible. This thing never dies, and it does absurd, an absurd amount of damage. I think Rob would say a babillion. Yeah, it does like a babillion damage. But that's the Sork build. It's tried and true. Everybody's running it. You can find this build anywhere pretty much. There's no shortage of guides for this. I'm not a guide guy. These are not my builds. I'm like the majority of players. I just like playing the game. I don't come up with builds on my own. I swap pieces in and out as I find them or as they seem interesting. But I'm like the majority of players. I just follow the big smart guys' builds, and I just play the game. Alright guys, out of fear of this video being entirely too long and people accusing me of my very first video just being a yap fest, we're going to try to speed through this as fast as possible. I set this Google document sheet up, pretty self-explanatory. This is the line we care about the most, gold per hour. I've sorted it by tiers,
340 million, 510 million, and 600 million. Long story short, just TLDR. If you can do tier 7s, do tier 7s. There's no shame in having to do tier 6s and working your way up, sell a couple Stygian stones, get another build online, start doing some tormented bosses, and getting a couple of mythicals under your belt, make a proper build until you get to tier 7. There's no real reason to do T8s. I mean, if you play all day every day and you got nothing better to do and you got a crazy strong build and you can do T8s easily, awesome. So quickly, T6s, this is their earliest entry level for farming Stygian stones. They can drop from tier 6. They're very rare. You probably get 1 or 2 per like 500 Aether that you spend in the tier 6. Most builds are capable of this difficulty. Tier 6 is not that unrealistic. Every build that I've ever made since season 3 or 4 could probably do tier 6 quite easily. When you only get 200 Aether though, it feels quite bad. It feels like you've wasted 10 minutes of your life. You can do 6 per hour at 10 minutes each, yada yada yada. Tier 7 is probably the sweet spot. This is where I would say the vast majority of players will try to get to ASAP and will remain here pretty much indefinitely. This is the first tier to give Aether reward. It's the tier 3 masterwork materials that you need to get from +8 masterwork to +12 masterwork. Much more Stygian stones from tier 7, quite generous. I've gotten up to like 7 or 8 in one run from a tier 7. Higher waves obviously means more Aether on average, and gold per Aether has increased. So gold per Aether in tier 6 is 160,000, and it goes up to 185,000 in tier 7. So quite a substantial increase per Aether. That adds up if we're talking, 500 to 700 Aether. Yeah, it's a big deal. Bosses are a bit tankier, but like I said, most good builds should have little issue killing them within sub 1 minute. If you can't, that's no problem. No need to be ashamed. Don't compare yourself to who somebody is today. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday. That's a good motto to live your life by, and it applies to video games as well. Don't try to compare yourself to somebody like Rob, or it's bad. So as long as you're making progress and you're 10% better than you were yesterday or the day before, you're doing great. You're making progress. That's what it's all about, baby. So, kill them in 5 minutes if you need to. Tier 7, that's where it's at. You get a couple +12s, and all of a sudden, look who's killing the bosses in 2 minutes instead. Tier 8s, this really only applies to the top 1% of players. If you think you're not a top 1% player and you're doing tier 8s, you should probably reevaluate yourself. You're most definitely a top 1% of players. This is very hard content. So this takes the most time, and whenever you do get bad RNG on Spires and you get a bunch of just crappy ones that don't really contribute much to getting a lot of Aether, it feels really bad. You just wasted 14 minutes of your life to get 300 Aether, and it feels like you're doing really hard content at 40% longer to get roughly the same amount as like a mediocre run in a tier 6 horde. It does happen. It's happened to me a few times. But you do get 30 Aether iron instead of 25 from these chests, from the material chests. And if you're trying to flex, or you just want a cool screenshot, or you want to show off, or you want some clout, this is obviously, the highest possible ceiling for gaining the most Aether possible. My current record is 1200, and just to do a little bit of quick math, 600 million gold at the current rate of 5 million per fear will buy you 120 distilled fears. It takes 27 distilled fears to summon one tormented boss. So 120 divided by 27 is 4.4. That's how many tormented bosses worth of materials you can have from 1 hour of farming tier 8s. With that being said, every 1 hour, the 4.4 is kind of like a 33% chance of getting a mythical, if mythicals are 7.5 per tormented boss. So, reasonable expected time that it would take you to use this method to farm one mythical unique would be about 3 hours. 3 hours of farming gives you a good chance, not 100% chance. Oh my god, that's not how math works, and we all know that. But a good chance. 3 hours of farming this roughly equals a mythical unique. with all the runs, this isn't new information, this is nothing crazy, but in case, this is your first video you've watched, I prioritize all of these in my spires to get as much Aether as possible. Anything Hellborn, basically. If it says Hellborn, pick it up. 50% faster spawns of events, that's just amazing. It's pretty much one of the best. Spawn 1 Hellborn plus 1 Aether is the best one for Hellborn, because if you're already spawning 3, that's plus 3 to each of them, and plus another one. So, I mean, like, it's just, this is like plus 9 Aether extra, or plus 8 Aether extra. It's huge. And you proc it like 20 times in one wave, at the last wave, mwah, chef's kiss. Double elites plus 2 Aether from Aether Fiends. This is new. The new update has made Aether Fiends really, really, really profitable as well. Effectively kind of just buffing your overall expectancy of like average Aether per run. Because before we had to rely solely on Hellborns. So if we got really bad RNG, it was kind of like, a dead run. Now we have 2 times, the chances at getting a good proc with the elites and the Aether Fiends and stuff. Hellfire spawns Hellborns is quite nice now. It also got buffed. It's working well. So I'm gonna stop yapping because I don't want this video to be incredibly long and boring and drawn out. Thank you guys so much for sticking around, giving me a chance. This is my first video ever. I'm sorry if my nerves are showing. I had fun making this video. I tried my best, and if you liked it, please give me a thumbs up, man, and stick around. I look forward to making more content in the future, and nice to meet you guys. Have a good day.